Hi everyone, my name is Mark Tindall. It's a great pleasure to be here today with Greg Royce to engage in something of a discussion, fireside chat. So Greg, it's great to be here and have the opportunity to spend some time with you. So thank you very much.
No, Mark, thank you. It's a real honor that you participating in this. An honor for me. Thank you.
Great, thanks Greg. Greg, maybe just to kick in, to a couple of things that I've had on my mind, a couple of questions. Being in the role that you've been in, or the roles that you've been in at St. Peter's schools over the years, is a demanding job. As things change around us. Just share some of that with us, and what's kept you fueled and engaged and inspired, over the years. What keeps you going?
The school, firstly, has an amazing feeling about it. So one can't help but be struck how the old boys are so wedded to the school and their perception of it, and so that's a motivation for me. I'm so scared that I'll spoil that, and how can I improve it? They hold the school in such high esteem. That's my motivation, and then the difficulties that I think I've faced and we've all faced here. One was opening the girls' school. We took a strategic decision because we had an empty boarding house. So we wondered, we couldn't leave a facility like that. The boarding numbers dropped quite quickly over a few years. And we couldn't leave it like that. It was a fantastic resource. So we considered renting it out as office space. We certainly had interest in that. People would love to work on a campus like this and have access to the green spaces and the sporting fields. We thought about a remedial school. We thought about all sorts of things. But we did have a demand from parents to establish a girls' school which would give the same as the boys' school was giving. So the real challenge then was how does one bring girls onto the campus without changing the feel, the ethos, the culture of the boys' school? So that we worked really hard at. Not everybody is satisfied. There's still people who disagree with the decision. But it has meant enormous benefits for boys and girls here. There's a little bit more surplus income, which we can spend. All our income goes straight back to the children. The other thing is that we've doubled the number of staff. So the personalities and the talents that the children now derive benefit from are just extraordinary. And we've got some awesome teachers as a consequence of that. Look, we teach differently. If I can share a little anecdote with you. We're focused on mastery, so we'd prefer not to give children marks. We would prefer them to learn it until they understand it, finished. Yeah. So if I'm tying my shoelaces, I'm teaching somebody to tie their shoelaces and they don't get it right. I'm not going to give them 65% and say, okay, you're done, you're nearly there, and then walk off. So we feel the same way about the way we teach maths and languages and so on. We want them to get it right. So recently, or fairly recently, I think it was the girls' school, they were interviewing a new staff member from a very prominent and highly thought of school. And as the staff do the interviews, not just management. Yeah. We believe everybody should have a say, see if they can get on with a person. And after all, it's the subject teachers that know what they're talking about.
Sure.
Not the heads and so on. So after a while, one of the maths teachers kept putting this philosophy of teaching to the person being interviewed, who was a head of department of maths. And when the question came, we'd prefer that you didn't give marks, but she got up, took her handbag and walked out. When we phoned her again, she said, it's impossible, I couldn't do anything like that, I don't know how you do it. Yeah. So we teach differently, and it's really about the people. So another challenge has been getting the people. We sometimes find that we have to advertise 2 or 3 times before we get the right people.
Yeah. Well, I think the world's changing around us. That's been, very apparent over the last year, and it's changing sometimes in very surprising and unexpected ways, but also in very positive ways. And, one has the opportunity to shape the world around you and be part of a group of people that endeavor to do that. We actually are parents of Daniela, who's in the girls' school, so we're massive fans of the girls' school. We love it. I think it's an incredibly joyful place. My daughter actually said to me this morning when I said that that I was a boarder in Founders. She said to me, "Oh, Dad, I should have been in Founders and not Atlee." And I said, "No, Daniela, Atlee is a wonderful house, and it's the best house, and it's the green house, and we're so proud of your being in Atlee." But the girls' school is a truly joyful place, and I think that combining the benefits of monastic education with co-ed is something that's increasingly a theme, and it's a theme in the world around us. And I think the younger we prepare our children, both, young girls and young boys for that, to be able to interact, compete, be gracious in, victory and defeat, and get the best of all around them, I think the better. And, we certainly find that the girls' school is a truly joyful place. And, from a practicality point of view, obviously for parents being able to come and be vested in and invested in, one school is also wonderful. So we think it's a great development. I'm aware that there are others that have different views, but I'm a very strong supporter. Greg, maybe you can talk also a little bit about some of the other big challenges that you've had to address along the way. What are some of the things that have been thrown at you during the course of your time at the school, where you feel you've had to assist and participate in the school adapting to sort of seismic shifts around us? There are obviously the day-to-day challenges. I'm more interested in understanding, things where you think that the school's truly got to make some big shifts going forward.
There's probably two areas that immediately spring to mind. One is inclusion, transformation, and the other would be the way we teach academics, the methodology we use. But let's start with inclusion, because that's really important. So we're an Anglican school. We live by our values. We have integrity. But in the past, I don't think we lived our values as we should have. And as much as we admitted people from other races, I think we did it more on a basis of assimilation. Mm. So expecting people to come in and be like us, rather than us also taking a step and forming a common culture, if you like. Yeah. So I don't think the school was very warming and welcoming to people. We thought it was. But I guess it's very much like for me to go to an Italian wedding with my family or my mates, and there's 6 of us in a room of 100 people and the rest of them are speaking Italian. I'm starting to think to myself, what have I got in common with these guys? How do I communicate with them? What's their culture like? Is it the same as mine? And so on and so forth. And so it was only, I think, we did a lot of work. We got an outside consultants to help us and so on. But it was only when, certainly I'll speak from my point of view. I don't want to speak on behalf of other people. But it was only when I realized my own subconscious bias that perpetually saw white culture as superior to other cultures, that the penny dropped for me. And so then I felt we began to make real progress, and other people felt the same. I will speak on their behalf because we've had so many discussions in the leadership, and then we began to make a real impact. I think change really started to happen there. Yeah. And it takes courage for people from different cultures, for black people to come here and say, you guys, you're not seeing us. You're not seeing what our needs are and that. And so many of them did. And that helped so much when you got honesty like that. And then we felt we were working together. And to the great credit of the heads, they weren't, when they were pointed out for the way they dealt with sports and so on, called out, they didn't act defensively. They listened and they acknowledged. Yeah. And that's when we started to make real progress. So the feeling, this belonging feeling that St. Peter's has, that captures the old boys like yourself, I think that's now proper. Yeah. It's spread out to many parents, so there's some parents who are still resisting it. Some people don't realize that we've been brought up, bombarded with the superiority of white Western culture, that it's impossible not to think that. Yeah.
Greg, can I comment if I may?
Sure, please do.
Before you move on to the second point you wanted to make. I think it's hugely important what you're saying. I think at a very foundational level, it's very difficult for any human being, and certainly for any child, to come into an environment and perform to their full potential and be happy without having a sense of belonging.
Oh, such a
so
good point.
belonging is the most fundamental thing. And from our perspective, as we look at schools down the line for where our children will move on to, the single biggest factor for me is, will this child feel a sense of belonging and feel happy in that environment? Because if you don't have that, it's very difficult to overcome and to perform. There are also some remarkable stories in our continent, in our country, of people that have been able to overcome the absence of a sense of belonging, and yet, ultimately succeed in every facet of their life. I'm reading a book at the moment, which is about a doctor who actually walked from South Sudan to South Africa. You will have seen it advertised, but incredible story. So, that sense of belonging is so important. And I think it also...
He's our top pulmonologist now.
He's a top pulmonologist in Midstream in Pretoria.
Yeah.
And the book is called The Boy Who Never Gave Up. And it's a truly remarkable story. But I think without stories needing to be absolutely remarkable, the day-to-day for every child needs to be one of... actually the bedrock is a great sense of belonging, and not every child is going to go on to be a pulmonologist or have that kind of story or be a Nelson Mandela or a great leader in society. They will live to hopefully the fullest possible potential that they have. So I think that's enormously important, and I think it also means that for all people, they can begin to appreciate people that come from a different culture, background, language, faith beliefs, orientation towards life, whether that's across sort of the more obvious dimensions in South Africa that have, always been a source of, or in many instances, a source of fracture across our society, or whether it's just looking to other cultures and society and their parents within the school who come from China, from other backgrounds, who are not, not South Africans, not South African born, and those people also need to be, made welcome and included. And it's important that we all we seek out those people, so that when we see that someone is looking lost, that they're not part of the conversation. Because let's be honest, there are people with whom it's naturally you arrive and you engage with them.
Yes.
And for me, regardless of what their racial background is, but there are other people, again, regardless of their racial background, for whom actually, feeling settled in their environment, doesn't necessarily come naturally because it is foreign to them. And it's so important for our children to see us role modeling that, for them to realize that is actually what you do. You don't just gravitate to, your top three mates in the room.
The familiar.
And in the process, you'll learn a great deal. And I've learned that from my wife, who as you know, is Colombian, and I've been blessed that we've lived in some different places, and in the main we've both had to adapt, but in the main she's had to adapt more than I have, and I've seen how graciously she's done that. But it requires effort from people. So I think this is such an important lesson, in terms of what we can give to our children. But also it's foundational for their own happiness and their sense of belonging, regardless of whom they are. And I think in education, that old thing about, induction and what's it called, where you need to get initiation and things. I think if you're truly proud of your school, what you should be focused on is what success looks like is when every individual that comes into your environment feels as proud and happy about their environment as you do. That's truly what success looks like, rather than feeling that it's some sort of exclusive club that you need to be initiated into this club. It should be something that you're proud to share, and you have absolute confidence that any individual from whatever background will find a place where they can extract benefits and a sense of belonging and happiness for themselves. So massively endorse what you're saying.
Yeah, you put that so well.
You were going to make another point, Greg. You said a second challenge that you've navigated.
Yeah, is academics. I think the school has always been known to be very spontaneous and innovative. So my predecessor, if we start with Richard Todd, who opened the school to all races. There's a little prep school when even the big prestigious senior schools, the boarding schools, weren't doing it. And just immediately after 1976. So you start with him, and then you go to Parnell, who brought in occupational therapists and so on to assist guys who were struggling academically. So what we would call now an academic support unit. He brought them onto campus, so parents didn't have to drag their kids off to different places. And so when I got here, and the school was strong on thinking skills as well, developing cognitive education to develop good judgment and train kids not to just make decisions based on emotion and the heat of the moment. So those things were in place. In fact, De Bono visited the school, the great Dr. De Bono, when he heard about the program here. So for me, it's always been an interest of mine, and here I found kindred spirits when I came, and what we were doing was looking at current research which was current then, and realizing that so many teachers, despite the training they have had, and often it's inadequate, they teach in the same way they were taught at school.
Yeah.
And there are so many things wrong with that. So there's not a true understanding of what motivates people. In the commercial world, I think people still think it's money. And yet research has shown time and time again it's having meaning and purpose in what you do. Yeah. And giving people autonomy, letting them work the way they want to work, where they want to work, when they want to work, in the way they want to work. And it's exactly the same for children. So there are misconceptions about discipline, there are misconceptions about self-confidence and self-esteem. So for years people are saying, and they're still doing this. You can pick up any women's magazine that talks about motherhood and they say how important self-esteem is. Well, it is important, but rapists and murderers often have great self-esteem. What we want to inculcate in children is self-confidence. So we want them to try things that they've never done before.
Yeah.
And the teacher's job is to take the child's hand and say, you see that step? You're going to get over it. And the child's going, no ways. And the teacher's got to say, I'm going to help you. Yeah. We can do it together. It's all those sorts of things, those approaches that we've tried to introduce. So we're very different from that point of view. We want children to be happy. And we've tested what we do. A long time ago, we developed a flexible learning program. So where you put together a project that the children had to tackle in groups, because you learn so much more quickly from your mates, and you also need instant feedback to learn. In my day, you did a spelling test, and then you only got it back 2 days later, or an essay, and by that time, you couldn't give a stuff what you were bored. Well, check, do your corrections. I mean, you don't learn like that. Yeah. When you're trying out your cell phone, you make a mistake and then you work out quickly there and then how to fix it. Yeah. So working in groups gives them that. So we start this flexible learning program. There's no right answer. There's several choices of topics, but you all learn the same thing and you get on with it. We give them autonomy. We have high expectations that they do it properly, and we give them purpose. We tell them why they're doing it, and then we let them go. So they love working like that. And the learning is massive. It's so quick. And sometimes they learn things that we didn't intend. We spend too much time as teachers saying, guess what's in my brain? Instead of create some new knowledge yourself.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But one of the things that struck me, both at the boys' school and at the girls' school, is the concept that I haven't been able to master this yet. So that's a just a shift in gears in terms of thinking, and marrying that with the fact that there's more than one path to a particular destination, and there's more than one pace to a particular destination, and actually arriving at the destination is only part of it, because it's what you learn along the way. It's also what you learn about yourself in the process. And yes, there is some content that ideally one wants to master over.
Correct.
But it's always also a process of learning, and learning in a manner that's appropriate for yourself. Some people are very visual, some people are auditory, some people have to experience it, and even conceptually. You take a subject like maths. Some people get it sort of arithmetically, geometrically. Other people get it by design. They've got to do a picture. Other people have got to think about a story, and they've got to sort of conceptualize it more intuitively. And there are different ways to solve problems in a mathematical context. And I think that's part of the learning. Now, whether you got to that particular answer of 42 or not, just conceptualizing that there are different ways to get there is so important for young people. And that plays out in lots of different disciplines, and it also plays out in how you solve problems with people, how you address relationships, challenges, how you frame things. So I think a school that focuses holistically on, yes, there's a certain amount of content that we want to master, but there's also different learning approaches for different people, different things that come more naturally to different people, and people have strengths and areas that they're still working on, and recognizing that amongst different people is so much richer than the sort of one-dimensional, what was your percentage results for a mo, a mass, a mat, a mamas, a matus, a mant, I was a Latin scholar, and I loved it, and we actually studied Latin here. And I remember Mr. Whitfield, Clive Whitfield, who was David Whitfield's father, and I happen to love Latin. But there are, there's just so much out there. Technologies, obviously, in terms of instant feedback, and in terms of some level of reward, because children enjoy. The enjoyment factor is quite high. The engagement, the engagement is naturally high. So very high engagement and very fast feedback, and so that's obviously something that's a great tool. You touched on something else that I wanted to ask you. I wanted to ask you a question. What makes St. Peter's special as a place of learning to prepare young people for both a purposeful and a happy life? I think when you are younger, sometimes you attach a lot to achievement, which can be quite narrow and can exclude happiness and can exclude things that are more purposeful. So what are your thoughts in terms of how, the St. Peter's community prepares these children to think about and set them up for a purposeful and happy life?
So you mentioned such an important concept a little earlier. You talked about the definition of success. You mentioned the definition of success. So I think certainly in our Western world, and in this community, in our catchment area, I think most people see financial success as the definition of success. And it's about your address and the car you drive and the schools you send your children to and so on, and the clothes you wear. I know we try to continuously present models of success to children which are not based on materialism. So we celebrate. Well, as an old boy, the Murphy Award. Yeah. I mean, it's the oldest trophy in the school. It's a tiny little battered cup from the school barber, but it's the award that all the boys they see it as the preeminent thing. And what do you get it for? You don't get it for getting top marks, or for opening the batting in the first 11, or for playing in the A basketball team and thrashing St. John's, or you don't. You get it for your personality, for giving, for thinking of others, for showing humility. You spoke about graciousness in victory and defeat. Yeah, that's what you get it for. Yeah. And I like to think the staff perpetually promote that. And we also celebrate staff achievements here because we are role models for the children. So we try and celebrate that as well. We talk about that. Yes, we do mention it when staff qualify for degrees in further study, but we do it from the point of view that look at the resilience and responsibility these guys have shown. They're holding down a job, they've got kids and a spouse, and they've made time to study. Yeah. So yeah, and then the happiness thing. I think the whole school. My predecessor Anthony used to say, "What, we want happy children or something." He also used to say at the PA things, "Drink as much." The parents' evening, that the PA would host. Drink as much as you want because you're paying for it anyway. But I shouldn't have said that. Yeah. But he said, "Yeah, he always used to say, we want happy children.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that earlier. You talked about belonging. You can't be truly happy unless you feel like you belong.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. I think that's still something we don't have right. Not the belonging bit, but when we reward children for things, how do we reward them in such a way that nobody is excluded and at the same time that the reward is worth something?
Yeah.
Not so that everybody gets a certificate.
Yeah.
It's clear cut in sports. I mean, if you run the fastest in the 100, well, it's clear cut. And in academics, but in other ways, how we're looking at that all the time to try and perfect that. That's another thing I love about the school. It's inward looking. It continuously examines what it does and says to itself, well, the staff say, how can we find a better way of doing this?
Rewarding people for their achievements also gets to the essence of intense focus on getting the best for and the best out of each child. And it really means that you've got to look at that child and say, what is it that this child loves? What are their passions? What are the things what are their strengths? And I firmly believe that, every single individual in the world has, something to contribute that other people don't have to contribute. And it's sometimes not easy to find. And it's a challenge to be able to, for the child that runs and comes first across the line in the sports day, that's obvious. But for other kids, you've got to make more of an effort to nurture that and to help them find what their passions are and the things that they want to be doing. You also touched on something else, which is compassion and empathy and care for other people. And that is another thing that I think is so important to continue to cultivate. They're very manifest ways in which it happens when there's a request for assistance for things that happen in our country, Mandela Day, etc. But inculcating in every child a deep sense of compassion and empathy for others. That it is about we first and foremostly, and not about me. And I think that's something that's super important to continue to cultivate, especially in a society where competitiveness, material achievement can begin to predominate, very quickly. I think it's something really important. Greg, perhaps also it would be great to hear a little bit about your some of your proudest moments. What are some of those times? There's obviously challenges that one has to overcome. There's a very diverse, community and set of interest groups, across parents, students, broader community, government, etc. So it's a challenging job, but it's a job that's obviously been hugely, hugely rewarding for you. So what are some of your proudest moments when you kind of have felt a deep sense of satisfaction?
I feel most proud when teachers from other schools in secure jobs and promotion positions apply to come and join our school because of what they know about the school, what they've heard. We've begun offering or hosting conferences a few years back on a range of topics, from music to pastoral care to maths, and to see who the delegates and the schools they come from, and then to see our teachers who we always include to offer workshops. They often feel that they're unworthy and don't have anything to offer. They're so used to attending conferences themselves and seeing so-called experts. Yeah. And then we insist that they go. And seeing the reception they get, that makes me super proud.
Yeah.
It's the people achievement what makes me the most proud. I think, not establishing the pre-prep or the girls' school, it's the people achievement.
Yeah.
And then hearing what All Boys have done. Oh my word. When I think of them running around barefoot and forgetting to hand in homework and seeing them in court just as superb husbands, wonderful fathers.
Yeah.
That's That's what makes me proud.
You know, one of the people that's a great advocate of St. Peter's, and I think you know him quite well, Simon Henderson, who I studied with, and
did you study with him?
I think he became the youngest ever head of Eton. I speak under correction, but I think he's the youngest ever head, you know, in his 30s or early 40s, when he started, probably in his early 40s. He speaks, you know, very warmly of St. Peter's. And I think the great lesson in that is, you know, while we have, you know, lots to learn from other people, and we should always bear that in mind, we also have lots to share with other people. And it's both. And I think one needs to, you know, have that in balance, but also be aware that one does have things to share with other people. And I think St. Peter's certainly has that. There's lots to learn always. It'll be a long trajectory going forward, but also a great deal to share with other people and to just share. I wanted to ask you another question in terms of the chronology of the heads. I was here with Richard Todd and then Anthony Parnell.
Oh, wow.
Just remind me the chronology from there in terms of the heads.
Okay, so I succeeded Parnell.
Okay.
And then they made me rector. And so we appointed Nigel Sloan as the boys' school head. And then when he left, Catherine Stianoff was acting head for almost a year. And then Swampy, Rob McCauley, came in.
Okay.
Yeah. And now Catherine.
Now Catherine back.
Yeah.
And I think it's wonderful to have a woman head of the school. I get back to that, you know, the benefits of monastic and co-ed and blending the genders and, you know, both the sometimes, you know, somewhat overt, you know, sort of competitiveness, but combined with, you know, also sort of recognizing, you know, themes of compassion and care. And I think, you know, there are great benefits from sort of blending the genders and the benefits of both monastic and co-ed.
But the boys know very well when you mention compassion and care, yeah, they're going to get a healthy dose of that, but they're going to have a harder ride than they did under Rob McCauley.
Yeah, they probably do. They probably do.
Yeah.
Greg, it's been a great pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for your time. We haven't, you know, been able to get on to what your next plans are. So, I really look forward to hearing about that, and I wish you, so much success going forward and lots of happiness. You have left an indelible mark on the school, over many, many years, and you won't be fondly remembered, although you will be fondly part of this community going forward, for a very long time. So thank you so much on behalf of many, many people for your contribution. And I just wish you so much success. There are great adventures ahead of you and so much more to contribute. So thank you very much.
Mark, I have to say thank you to you. You weren't an old boy in my time. So for me, it's a huge honor that you've made time to come and chat. I'm really grateful. And it's a special honor to have a Rhodes Scholar to chat with.
Great. Thanks so much, Greg. Thank you.